All right. So I have from that exhibit actually, well, another exhibit at the Illy House, but I have flower cards, and you probably remember our body ourselves.
Yeah.
And so this was an installation I did called Kitchen Sanctum that like celebrated women in the kitchen. And these are affirmation cards. Hey,
Cool.
did you know Matt Fantastic from
No.
Elm City Games?
Oh,
So,
I don't know him directly, but we have a connection because one of the guys on our board is actually really good friends
oh
with them.
yeah, so he's really cool. And I met him through the Grove former incubator space, and he makes cards and he's a game designer. And so when I was thinking about like things how I can stem my art, because like obviously what I do is like food, and it's kind of like after you see it, it dissipates. It's like what are things that I can do that maybe I can possibly sell or stuff like that. So he told me about making cards, and then I finally made them for this exhibit. And then I have these other sets that I haven't been able to download and then bring them up to move. And then I have to maybe like these, for instance, like there's size 6 font. You can't use size 6 font.
No.
It's very small. So these are like a prototype. So I have to redo these, and then I have 3 other sets to be able to do. So if anyone doesn't know like Moo Printing, they do really nice cards, but they do different. You can have a different picture on each side, up to 50 cards. So it's a really great way to do a prototype. Obviously, I would not be able to around $30 a box. I wouldn't do that for production. Um, I might make them for a limited run because they're really nice, how heavy they are, but um, they're really good to do prototype. So would you like me to do flower cards or affirmation?
How about affirmation?
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna shuffle. You can see me doing that, and then you can just tell me to stop.
Good. That's good.
All right, and then I'm just gonna spread them, and then you can tell me, I'm gonna run my hands. I call it magic hands. And then I'm going to pick a card.
I was wondering how you were going to do this. Okay. Let's do, I'm right brain dominant. Let's break out a little bit and do something with your left hand there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they said, to build your intuition, which is helpful to lead you on your way to your dreams. Like when you set them, you follow your intuition. To build up that is to do things with the opposite of your strength. So like to write with your left hand, to do things more if you're right-handed, if you're left-handed, and so it helps you.
See, there you go.
I nourish my soul and answer my true hungers. Answer to my true hungers. Why do you think that you got that card?
Wow. Read the first part again. The second
I
part sticking.
nourish my soul and answer to my true hungers.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have 2 siblings, but when my parents split up when I was young, I actually stayed with my mom and my 2 siblings stayed with my dad. And so we had a very different upbringing. As I've explained to you, like I had a very really vagabond for a mother, but she was also one of these people that just believed that anything was possible and always instilled that in me. And I think I got to a part of my life about 10 years ago where I just decided like I had been working, doing things to be a provider for my family. And I was just decided I was going to choose something to do that was going to be for me and be fulfilling. And I had a really great job. And some people in my family were like, why would you leave that and go start all over again? And I'm like, because I'm clearly destined to do something else. I want to do some good in the world. And I was talking to my cousin who were born a day apart. And she said to me, I said, what do you think my purpose is? I was kind of trying to figure it out. And she said, I think your purpose is to nourish people. And seriously, it was so crazy because it was like, I hadn't made a decision about going into food. I hadn't been talking about food and health and farming and all these things. Like I'd been a backyard gardener, and that stuck with me, and it kind of led me on this path. And here I am like 10 years later. But I had people who I had worked with in the corporate world who were like, wow, you're not afraid of anything. And I was like, or you're not afraid to try new things. And I was like, well, my mom just always said, like, if you want to do something, just make a plan and go do it. And so that was so foreign to some people, but it never felt foreign to me. So that's kind of what comes to mind when I hear you say those things.
All right. I'm going to do your flower cards too, because you do work with,
Plants.
yeah. So,
Okay.
all right. So you see me shuffling again.
Yeah.
So these just have different flowers and different meanings. And I love like florology because it came into, I guess, like fame or, you know, lots of people knowing about it in Victorian times because they couldn't talk about sexual things. And so it was a way to code language and communication. And I like symbols and symbolism, and I love flowers. I love flowers. So,
All right.
tell me when to stop.
Yeah, anytime. Those are definitely well shuffled.
All right. And I have amethyst here. And I have a clearing crystal also. All right, tell me when to stop.
Let's see. Pick something over there with your right hand.
All right, lily of the valley, sweetness. You feel like you have to cultivate more sweetness, or?
We always need to cultivate more sweetness.
Yes.
I think I have good intentions, and sometimes in my effort to like just want to get things done, I can come off as a bit brash. And I think the people who know me well know that that's sort of the rough side of my personality, that I'm not like, I'm sort of like barreling ahead, trying to accomplish what I'm out to accomplish. But I hope my intentions are kind, at least that's how I set them out to be. So.
You are kind, but I appreciate your utilitarianness. You have a lot to do. So I prefer people who are kind to their actions as opposed to seemingly sweet and not kind at all.
Exactly.
Actions.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
And I feel like that too. Like I said, I'm trying to channel, I said Chloe, an archetype of Chloe, the divine feminine, and trying to be softer, because some people have said like my delivery is a little, like you said, like curt. But I feel like it's bullshit, because like the tone police, it's just, I'm like, it's like my actions are nice, like, and so sometimes like when you have a lot of things to do and you're going through perimenopause and you have a bunch of jobs and you have like a 13-year-old who might underappreciate you sometimes and going through their hormonal issues, you have but so much like softness
so much
that you
kindness
could do.
Oh.
Like, I mean, but the thing is, like, I am kind in my actions, but then, like, so I feel like sometimes like people want this kind of stroking that is like a little unnecessary sometimes, that if they just meditated and they gave it to themselves, they wouldn't be seeking it all the time from other people.
Yeah,
and
I'm not one of those people to stroke other people's egos either. However, I will say, like, I can totally assimilate with that. I empathize completely. I am in your brain pattern. But I have a very dear friend, an older woman that I worked with at 2 different jobs. And she used to sit outside my office. And I can't tell you how many times I would hear her on the phone, and she would be trying to either track down stuff or find answers. And she was just always nice to people, and she always got what she asked for. And I learned so much by listening to her that I try to remember that. Like, yeah, there's a line between stroking people.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about those people that are really needy. I'm not talking about that, because I feel like, especially like people, like I try and be nice and kind, but then there's those people that I feel that last year I realized, and we can talk about this later, but this sense of like codependency that some people are just can be really needy, and you're like, you want me to cook you dinner, and then you want to tell me what you want for dinner. It's like, you can't do that. And then you want me to be nice about it. When I say, when I nicely say to you, I'm not changing my menu because I'm cooking you dinner. I'm not a short order chef. Like, you know? So that's what I'm talking about, like that, you know, when people, and they push back with their tantruming and they want you to be nice about that. I just don't have time for that.
Yeah, me either.
So James, lead us in dreamscaping.
Well, I'm kind of curious about doing one of my cards.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that first.
Yeah, I love where that went, because I mean, just listening to what you said in terms of sweetness, I'm like, where does that, like, that takes me a lot of places in terms of how much I want to cultivate that, give that off. So yeah, let's do my flower card. Let's see.
Okay.
And I've been doing a lot of flower tracing lately, so I've got sort of like flower shapes and forms that I'm playing with. I've got like cutouts all over my desk right now. I've been sort of looking at different forms and looking at flattened flowers, spending a lot of time looking at orchids, and just like the form of what a silhouette is. So I've been playing with that a little bit, and so let's see if the new flower shows up for me today.
Okay. Tell me when to stop.
Stop right now with whatever's in your hand.
Okay, so what was that? Is at the top, you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever your hand is on.
I knew it was gonna come up. Guess what flower came up?
What is it?
When people think that, I tell people, look, I can't read the future, but I am a conduit. Yes, I am.
Orchid.
Yeah.
So
It's funny that we're doing this. Can I just say, like, I'm doing a flower puzzle. It's gigantic and challenging.
Yeah.
So, and that's like serendipity, like people don't feel about cause and effects of serendipity. And this has happened before where people have been talking about their flower and then it's come up when I've done their card, or someone like, a card will come up like tulips, and I'll say, like, why do you think that card came up? It's like, oh, because my father grew tulips and they were always on the side of the garage. And so I was like, that's your father coming and speaking to you, So orchid, refinement, thoughtfulness, and glorious femininity. So why do you think you got that card?
That's what I'm surrounded by. That's what my home has always been. It's a comfort for me, I think. Femininity, women, spaces of women, being in a home, being locked down in a home. And I mean, it reminds me of my mom. So, I mean, it's very like, and we're so far from each other. It's a kind of a moment of longing, right? So, that's an interesting one. What was the first word you said there?
Refinement, thoughtfulness, and glorious femininity.
Yeah. Refinement is an interesting one too. Refinement is a word, like, I'm not very refined. I'm not very polished. I'm very like off the cuff, and everything is like unfinished. So I think I see something perfect and I'm like, ooh, I could never be that. I could never do something that perfectly, do anything refined. So thanks for that. That really, yeah, let me show you the piece that's got some orchids in it.
Okay. Katie, was this what you expected?
What?
I asked Katie, is this what she expected? Because it's like, it's different every week. So I don't know what to expect either.
Well, here are my orchids.
Oh, those are beautiful.
So really I saw sort of I don't know if it's an angel or some sort of form in these orchids as I was manipulating them.
Yeah, I
So
can see an angel or a fairy perhaps.
yeah, so there's a bit of that. So definitely.
What's your medium?
That is a digital drawing. That's like an iPad exploration. I do a lot of tracing. Like I would say I paint, but I'm really a drawer. Like I do drawings, and when I paint, there are really more tracings and cuttings and drawings than dimensional, strong painting. Yeah.
I've been doing more drawing too, because I mean, I think I said this in our group that I feel like I can't draw. And so I've been trying to challenge myself. And I love doing flowers too. And I've been working with geometric shapes and tropical flowers, and then doing geometrical shapes within geometrical shapes, like with like I love red ginger, lily, tiger lily. I want to start doing some orchids, but I love to do the geometric shapes, and it looks so pretty um, with marker. And I want to start working with acrylic, because I like when the acrylic is really thick.
That's what I enjoy. I sort of start with a drawing and then use a marker, or go really wide brush acrylic to go over lines, or make lines bigger, fatter. I've been seeing a lot of people using paint mops lately. So like graffiti artists like style paint mops that are just like fat, on the edge of a vessel that holds onto the paint, and it's usually acrylic or something lighter than that. And that's just like, you can just kind of take one and go do whatever you want, and keep a really consistent thick line. So it's definitely something I want to pick up. Something to kind of like draw on is like, that's helped me in my practice when Nadine and I were doing the Artist Way. Just to go back to that, is I've been taking myself on an artist date every week. That is like a date where I sort of like take myself out of my house and look for a treat, do something that I enjoy. And I've been buying myself a new medium every week. So whether that's pastels or like this quick dry clay that I bought myself last week, I've sort of been buying something to play with. And that play is a huge part of dreaming for me. And it goes into Julia Cameron's, serendipitously talks a lot about following your dreams, or kind of like going with, doing the things you want to do, or affirming, your childhood desires, all those things, like being true to those things. So it's something that I see taking practice. It takes like intention, right? And so going to dreams, I think, especially spending so much time listening to other people's dreams, I start to think about how I can help affirm other people's dreams, right? Sometimes we're not ready to do that ourselves. And sometimes we think up things or dream up things that we're sort of like not sure what to do with, or we think are outlandish, or they're even silly. Or they're just not even something we want to make real. It's just like a dream that feels fun. Like, I want to live in Bali, but like, do you really want to go live in Bali? I don't know. Like you might decide that and be like, well, no, that wasn't really right. So, I mean, I think life is full of like being intentional and making choices. And that's really the space that interests me. And as a design strategist, it means like stepping back from a problem and asking the why behind the why behind the why of why certain things are the way they are. And they're usually just because somebody said this should be this way. Makes people make design decisions.
I've caused a lot of trouble by asking why a lot of things.
Well, I mean, that's the way, is asking the 5 whys, right? If somebody tells you something that doesn't sit right with you, you have to ask why. And that goes back even to what you said about like being decisive or being a little short with people. It is, for me, those things of asking why and being a little bit rude or critical, they come from a place of curiosity too. It's
But
like, well,
that's like a lot. That's a lot when you ask people questions, especially when they're asking you to do something, you're asking for clarity. And then you have these people who they want you to do the world. And I can tell from being a consultant, like who's going to be difficult. And if you can't articulate what you want from me, how can I make you happy? I can't make you happy if you can't articulate what you want. And if you
Yeah.
haven't done the work to like do your Pinterest board, write your brainstorm, something, then I'm not going to be able to come out of nowhere and create meaning for you because I need something like,
You know, so I grew up in Hawaii and my mom sold fine art for like 40 years out there. And I used to say to her, I don't know how you do this job. First of all, it's exhausting because you're just talking to people all day long. But I was like, you get a lot of no's. And she's like, yeah, you do. But she said, what I've done is like, I turn that around. And when people come in, they'll walk in and they'll be right away like, I don't like that. I don't like that. And she's like, so her approach would be like, this is great. This is a great starting point. It's always good to know what you don't want, because that's how you know what you like. So now that you've pointed out all the things that you don't like, tell me what you like. And I mean, like, she was brilliant. She made such a good living at it. Anyway, a great way to turn that around when people are like, yeah, exactly. They don't know what they want, right? So they start by saying, I don't want this and I don't want that, or I don't like this.
but a lot
I'm
of those
always
people
glad to
though,
hear-
they're very hard to please because they really have never, it's like, you have to know what you like. You have to give people some ideas of the things that you like. You can't operate in like, I don't like this and I don't like this and I don't like that. You have to
Right.
give
But
people
I'm just
some
saying, she was a great leader with that. Like she used it to her advantage. I'm always glad when I hear, so my kids are in the 30s now, and I'm always glad when I hear James, people like you or them say like that they're really trying to nurture that inner voice and allow their creativity to come through no matter what they're doing, like even if they're, you know, working a daily grind, because I had, you know, out of necessity, I suppressed that a lot in my life. And for a very long time, like just being a parent, being the utilitarian, you know, sort of functional person. And I've reached a point where I'm just drawing those boundaries better and saying, okay, I'm going to give a certain amount, but then I'm going to reserve this much for myself and make sure I'm doing these things that like nurture that creative spirit and allow the sweetness to come through.
yeah, I like that you appreciate that in your kids and in young people and in people figuring out how to get where they're going. Because I think when you like a really good moment to get to, and not everybody gets there, but a really good moment to get to for me was when you realize, what do I need to do for myself in order to be like of value elsewhere, right? Like if you are going to do a daily grind, or if you are going to do a service to others, or be a consultant, or like cook for them or whatever, like how much do you need to be fulfilled in your own creativity in order to then have other people ask you directly to do things for them, whether it's work or contracts or like a hustle, and remain satisfied. So for me, let me start talking to you about the dreams. And the screen sharing is disabled right now, but I'd love to share my screen with you.
Rose, can you make that happen, please?
Yeah, let me try making you a co-host. One sec.
What are you flipping through, Nadine?
So I'm flipping through the cards. I'm not going to really be able, because on the phone, on Canva, if I start changing things, it's different on the computer. I kind of forgot about that. So I'm doing fine print. If I was doing pictures, it would be easier. I can do that. But I'm just going through because I haven't looked at these decks of cards in a long time. So if you want to pick a number between one, you can't pick 1 and 99, and I'll read your spirit animal for you.
How about
you've sort of like inspired me to go ahead and do cards, because I've taken my dreams and put them on index cards. And like the more I see you dig into the cards and practice this, I've got sort of a draft on it that what I'll show on screen. But like, I just want to say, like, you have pushed me to be like, I'm just going to order it, the prototype.
Yeah, good. They're fun, right?
Oh yeah, like just to be able to play with. But let's see what's on your screen and see what shows up with the number you just picked, Katie.
Okay, so what number are you gonna choose, Katie?
How about 27?
Okay.
I have this concept that I started working on last year, even before while you're looking that up. Let me know when you get to it. I had this concept of capturing. I'm so fortunate being on the farm because the environment and the landscape is constantly changing, right? And so I just really delight in the fact that I get to, especially last year when we were all sort of forced to be isolated. It felt so healthy when it finally got warm enough to be able to go there and be around other people and be in this space where things were growing. It was just so healing.
All
You
right,
have it?
so can you see it? It's you got
Mhm.
deer,
Yeah.
and then oh,
Mm.
shoot. 27?
Yep.
Just wait a minute, because I might have. Okay. You got dog actually. So noble, faithful, loyal, teaching, protection, guidance, obedience, sensory perception. So why do you think you got that card?
Noble, obedient.
Noble, faithful, loyal, teaching, protection, guidance, obedience, sensory perception.
I mean, I think a lot of those are good descriptive words of what I've grown into, you know, in the last 10 years. A lot of those things that I wasn't involved in, in my previous life. Um, I've learned so much. So the farm, as I mentioned, is an educational farm. And it's interesting because I never pictured myself or would describe myself as a teacher, but since I've been there, I've learned from the other people that we hire as educators, and I learned so much from being around them. So it's been such a great tool in all areas of my life. Yeah.
Okay, great. James, you want me to do yours? Do you want to pick a number?
17.
Rose, I don't want you to be left out if you want your cards done. You know, I'll always do your cards for you.
Sure. After this one.
All right, you got cats.
Oh, I hate cats. Okay,
got-
okay, tell me more.
Guardianship, detachment, sensuality, mystery, magic, independence, astute, and watchful.
Okay.
Why do you think you got those cards?
I don't know. I guess it goes back to domesticity. I mean, it goes back to what was the first word you said?
So guardianship, detachment, sensuality, mystery, magic, independence, astute, and watchful.
I think I'm detached from other people for my own safety, security, but I'm very much like involved and curious. I think that, yeah, now that you go back to that, that's kind of like my vibe. Like I don't really care too much about, getting involved in other people's business, but I'm definitely very curious. It is a kind of cat-like. But I'm not into cats. I'm allergic to cats. I'm scared of cats. No good experiences with cats.
Rose, what number would you like to choose?
Let's say
well, I won't say they're not cute. They're cute.
Rose loves cats.
I do. I have a cat. 43.
I wish I could do this on the computer. It's so much easier.
You want love? You don't want love. One love? Two want love.
You said 43?
Yes.
What's this link you gave us, James?
So that's the sort of my board. That's a collection of all the dreams I've sort of collected or been sort of sorting through. So if you want to go on that link, it's kind of like a virtual whiteboard. It's got all these stickies. It's very corporate, but I'm sort of reusing it as a forum for collaboration and sharing these ideas with people and even getting their feedback. So.
Do you want to describe Miro? Because I just found out about it at a design workshop I was in at the end of December.
Yeah, so Miro is essentially a virtual whiteboard and sticky board that, you know, an unlimited amount of people can collaborate on at the same time. So you'll see multiple cursors on this board if you go click the website, and I'll share my screen in a second, but I want to explain first. And I've sort of clustered these stickies that are like ideas that I want people to read. You know, it's like a sentence on each sticky. But then I've put sticky notes below each of them and color coded them and said, like, put comments below. It's like really, it's like an infinite space. You can go in any direction as long as you want, and post things and drop images and doodle. And it's a great collaboration tool. I think it's mainly where a lot of designers are working right now with clients to show them things. But also I see it has a lot of potential for art making, for collaborative work. And it's something that I look for partners in, like, especially when it comes to thinking about meaningful things, vulnerable ideas across distance. I see potential in it. So it's a tool I've been experimenting with a lot. So let me share this Miro board on the screen.
Let me just tell Rose what you got. Horse, freedom, stamina, mobility, the land, travel, power, freedom, grace, nobility. All right, Rose. You see it? Rose is there.
Sorry, I was muted. I've said this is not a time for travel, and I doesn't do much anyway, so that seems a little odd.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be literal travel. It could be time travel. It could be,
True.
you know. So
I read a lot, so I suppose I travel a lot in that way.
Yeah. That's the best type of traveling. The movies, I love books as movies in my head. All right, James. School us on, let me see, because I'm not, yay.
So here are sort of these different kinds of dreams, or really different kinds of ideas that I see as I've spoken to people. And really what I want to think about dreams as is sort of prototypes or portals or new forms or experiments that help us think about how the world could be different. And for me, those things are useful, right? The more time you spend thinking about these, about dreams, about potential alternate, what the way I describe it here is different kinds of material relations, different kinds of ways of being with the world, different textures, different, you know, kinds of gravity, different kinds of relationships with objects. Those are moments that help us realize, you know, something about what it means to be human, right? Those are sort of lessons that can help us think about different ways to interact with others and interact with things. These other ideas that are meaningful intimacies, I think about what does it mean when there are other people in your dreams, and how do you interact with them, and how are you sharing emotions? How are you opening up spaces of vulnerability in your dreams, and how does that open up ideas about how we could live in a different kind of relation to others? Alternate social assemblages are like different kinds of institutions, different kinds of cities, different kinds of spaces that we can inhabit with other people. And those things are really interesting because we think a lot about, you know, social dreaming, people dreaming together is like is a way of thinking about this. Like this is the space of the political. And something that I find really interesting is how these things can be mobilized and turned into policy, turned into proposals, turned into platforms and agendas. But really, I think it's important to take a step back and live in sort of live in fantasy to think about how those roles actually play out before we actually, you know, I think a lot of people my age spend time thinking about, you know, or at least there was a lot of momentum maybe a year ago this time about socialism and Bernie Sanders and all this stuff. So it's such a weird time to be talking about this right now. We are kind of like in a space that I think we see positivity on the horizon, and very grim things at the same time. So it's a lot of figuring out where you land and what kind of world you want to live in, what kind of world we're forced to live in. Not everybody has that luxury. So another part that's crucial for me here is thinking about, in terms of the social, not everybody has the permission to dream, right? Not everybody even necessarily has the time or the mental space to reflect and think about what they want, because they're so busy and so forced to focus on what they need for survival or for their families. And this can be both, you know, across class, across race. I mean, I think there's really a lot of lack of permission on the part of people who make decisions, and largely on the part of designers. And I speak to designers and to people who do service because that's where I see myself embroiled in my professional work, is people who have been caught up in a continuum of how things should be, whether it's through design or through art making or through technology, but really spend little time thinking about what worlds people actually want to live in. So this is one that's really interesting to me. And then the last is liberated futures. These are sort of the spaces that are helping achieve sort of greater liberated imagination. So these are the spaces where I think you see new worlds open up, right? Like what do these futures look like where, you know, we have flying houses? What would that, so that's one example here, and we'll zoom in on this page and talk about liberated futures. So these are a couple of ideas that came from interviews, and I sort of dialed in on a couple of ideas that showed up here. So I'm gonna read these out, and you tell me if there's one that sticks out to you, and we can sort of think about that together. One thing I think that I find really useful in my practice is I've got like, you know, notes from every single interview I've done on a Google Drive that I like to share with people if they're interested in a certain dream. And I say, hey, why don't you read the notes from this interview and tell me if there's anything that sticks out from this person's dream. And one of the things I see in that practice is really the retelling of stories. So I think about this as sort of like a distributed myth-making project, right? What would it mean to hear about somebody's dream, have it live in a drive somewhere, and then suddenly a stranger picks it up at a different time, a different place? And how could that either inspire them or help them create something? How could it be a micro commission to say, hey, artist, I want you to read this interview I did with somebody about houses that fly, and make something based on it. And not everybody does that kind of work, but I'm looking for sort of partners, and I've partnered with a couple of writers, researchers, 3D artists, and video artists to sort of illustrate and retell these dreams through whatever visual medium they want. I mean, it could even be a meal about one of these things, and I think that would be really beautiful. So I'd love to hear what kind of dinner you'd plan around one of these. Yeah, so here's a couple, and let me know if any of these stick out to you. If you want to go into the Miro, you can easily click into one of these and type in what your reaction is. So again, so the first one is houses that fly, a house that travels the world through flight. So one of the things I find interesting in dreams is a lot of people do dream about houses. Houses are often, you know, either the same space that we're in, they're usually like a version of a childhood home, or they may be the home that we're in now. But we think about them as we sleep, but we also think about our homes a lot, whether it is, you know, you're sick of this room and you want to redecorate it, or dream home is obviously something that people spend a lot of time thinking about. People watch a lot of HGTV these days. So the home is really a space that is like full of dreams, right? I mean, it's the American dream. It is, you know, childhood memories. There's everything wrapped up in there. And so this dream about houses that fly makes me think about, I mean, there's even old myths and, you know, even religious stories about flying houses. My wife is a scholar of a religion, of Catholicism. She's a professor, and there's something called the Flying House of Loreto. And it is a house in Loreto, Italy. And it is said to be the Virgin Mary's house where she grew up, or where she was born, but it is in Italy. And so the Flying House of Loreto, the story is this house flew from the birthplace of Mary in, you know, Galilee or Israel or wherever it was, and it flew to Italy and landed in Italy in the, you know, the 1200s or something like that. And it was discovered, and, you know, it's still there and people can go visit it, but you go there and you know, okay, this house flew here. And so those are just images that I can't shake. Like, I think about, you know, how those are just like surprising things that we can, like the fact that that can be scriptural or religious as a practice is really interesting to me, right? But also more, you know, more broadly, like, what would it mean to fly or travel through your house? I mean, we kind of do that virtually. We're kind of flying right now. But a lot of people sort of wish they could travel with the comforts of home. So yeah, so there's one, and that's a really broad one, but I think
flying
really
RV.
What?
A flying RV.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, I've been paying a lot of attention to like a camper movement. What is it called? Like
the tiny home?
Well, there's tiny homes, but there's also like more people living in like RV campers, like custom campers full time.
Yeah.
Like either empty nesters or young people who say, you know what, I'm going to travel the country and just like live in national parks.
And buses converted into living quarters.
Yes, and there's a whole great history of that that I find just like, there's a book I've got actually sitting here. It's by a friend of mine who, I forget where this was, what institution did this, but she and a friend took a school bus and turned it into an art space, a community space. It was called, sort of documented the process of breaking apart this bus and turning it into a space. So that's her. Her name is Kim Charles K. She was also in our larger Human Way group. But I think about what these spaces could mean and how much like Airbnb is centered on this idea that is a little countercultural, right? Of like wanting to be at home anywhere you are. Like, I think that was like the old school way of, you know, being a world traveler, of like wanting to be a local. But there's all sorts of issues with that. There's all sorts of complicated notions of, you know, if you can belong in a place that you're not from. I feel weird being in the Midwest I don't quite feel at home, but I live here, but I hope that when people come into my house, they're transported to Queens a little bit.
And so why don't you talk about, growing up, and then why did I say that you lived in Chicago?
I live close to Chicago, and
Yeah.
Chicago's really my gravitational pull.
Okay, that's why, because
Yeah.
I love Chicago, and that's why probably,
Talked about
because I was just like, why did I say that? So how far away from me from Chicago, and then are you close to Detroit or?
I'm right in between.
Okay.
So our Kalamazoo, Michigan is the midpoint between Detroit and Chicago.
So how far is?
Like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, that's great. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it's like from New Haven going to New York.
I mean, but if you go to Chicago from Michigan, you gain an hour down. So like it's really shorter than that.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So like the time change is a benefit.
And then how you're far away from Traverse City?
Traverse City is like 4 hours away, maybe 3, but it is gorgeous, beautiful beaches on that side of the lake.
I love Traverse City. I love it. I've been there once for I was doing a culinary team building event for, it was like the Council of Governors or something. So they flew me up there, and if I would have known it was to be really nice, I would have stayed longer. But you have this idea of the Midwest, and I don't know what idea I had, but I didn't think it was going to be fun or anything interesting at that time. And when I went up there, I was like, it was cherry season. So they had all these cherries, and then it's like a gourmet mecca, like the whole local food thing. And they had like local duck and wineries. It was so much fun because luckily I did have a little bit of time before I had to go to the airport, and I got to go and see like the dunes and all that kind of stuff. I was like, this is really pretty. And then I didn't realize that it's like, they compare it to Cape Cod, the way that it looked like 30 or 40 years ago. And then I learned about, is it Macabre Island or some island?
Mackinac
Yeah,
Island.
yeah, Mackinac. I want to go there. So,
yeah, they've got like just like a horse streets. Like there's no cars. It's all horse.
Yeah, it's like Block Island here.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've never been to Block Island either, but that I love going to Martha's Vineyard, and I'd like to go to, I've never been to Block Island. There's another island off the coast of Rhode Island called Prudence Island that I thought was like so interesting.
So Puritan.
Exactly. It's like, I want to go to that island. They probably a dry island, so you have to make sure you bring your drinks. Because but I feel like some of those places up in Michigan might have been dry too. But it's like, so it's really pretty. I'd love to go on a ride all along those lakes.
It's a beautiful really shoreline for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, with global warming, they're saying that it might be a place to go, able to have your takeaway house.
There may be palm trees growing in New York City in 10 years. Like, I think we're
palm trees. Like, I mean, there might not be Williamsburg. My friend was talking about wanting to buy a brownstone. He's like, brownstones have gone from 5 million to 2 million. I'm like, is the brownstone going to be there in 10 years?
You can live on the top floor.
But then now it's like New York is being overrun by rats. Like, people are showing like what the rats are eating, plastic. It's like, no, I don't know about buying. If you have millions of dollars, I think it might be better to go to Vermont, Michigan.
I mean, so many reasons. I mean,
flip a state or two, like buy a whole state.
Well, that goes into the next
dream.
It's the dream, and one of these is reverse colonization. So it's like building a boat, sailing across the Atlantic, and finding a plot of land to claim anywhere, right? Like, it's something that like somebody did this shit before. They just said, this is my land, and this is I own it now by the power of the king. What does it mean to do that now, to claim a space? Where can you claim space? Can you buy space? Can you squat space? Can you squat on a plot of land?
Well, do we really, when people buy it, and if you haven't paid for it in the 30 years or whatever, do you really own it? And then also, I
Yeah.
feel like as an immigrant, I'm just glad to be here and people let me be here. And I mean, some people feel like when you say that, well, we're on native lands. Well, the natives came from somewhere. I was like, well, I think they've been here the longest. And like we have indigenous people everywhere. But I have no claim to land. I don't, and that's why I haven't really, I've always felt conflicted about buying it. And I think that also like here in America, but then also I feel that having family land in Jamaica makes me feel more, I don't know. And then you think about going back to Africa or going somewhere. I don't know where I'd want to, when you're talking about like, where's your home? I'm like, where's my home? I was born in Toronto. You know, I'm Jamaican. You know, I grew up in New Haven, but I don't know if people would really say I'm from New Haven. I lived in Boston for 23 years. No one in Boston would say I'm from there. So like, I always feel like home is where you are.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's a great part of that.
I want to put on your board Liberated Futures. It's probably like reverse colonization. Can you read what that says?
So it says, dreaming about building a boat, sailing across the Atlantic, and finding a plot of land to claim for ourselves. And really, it's going back to like, where do you belong? What's native land? I think my parents are immigrants, and I think about land the same way. Like, where do I want to claim for myself, right? And even if I have a property, if I own, my little lot of property.
Where are your parents immigrants from?
From Colombia.
And I don't think we talked about this. I love arepas.
Oh my God. I make them, sometimes I go on a kick where I eat an arepa every single day.
Yeah.
I make them at home, and I make my little patty, and it's just like a perfect little breakfast. I think my mom lives on them alone with a little cheese on top. So
do you like the Venezuelan ones?
I love a sandwich. So yeah, I didn't grow up with that. I discovered that at like a trendy place in the East Village in New York.
Oh, so I grew up, one of my best friends was Colombian. So in high school. So I learned Spanish bad words. We won't say them, Rose, don't worry. She taught me Spanish bad words. They're so hilarious. And so I learned how to make the Colombian arepas. I feel like I make those a lot better than the Venezuelan ones. I do want to get a arepa maker. Do you know that they have the makers that you can just put them in and it makes that nice crust? So I learned about the Venezuelan ones from a colleague that I used to work with. And I love how you can just stuff them with different things. We have a bunch of different arepa places in New Haven.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I first heard about arepas recently when I was browsing for some place to have lunch near the Green, and like, oh, this looks interesting. What are those?
Did you go to the place? Which one? Did you go to the one down on Orange Street or the one on High Street?
Let me see if I can look up which one it was.
We have some trucks, James, too.
That's excellent. I mean,
yeah.
I love when people know what I'm talking about, and honestly, I make them on a dinner plate, between two dinner plates with some saran wrap, and then I'm good, and then I put them on a grill.
All right, the restaurant is Rabumba.
So that's the one on Orange Street, right?
Okay, let's see.
No, that's the one on High Street.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So.
Yep. The one on Orange Street is delicious.
Is which one?
The one on Orange Street. Mike and I went there. It was very good.
Yeah, it's across from Art Space.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they're doing well. They seem like they're doing well during the pandemic. Every time I walk by, there's people in there, and they seem like they're doing a really good takeout business.
That's good.
So I want houses. I don't know about houses that fly, but one of my dreams is I want to have my own culinary center that has a garden or a farm if it has a farm, it has to have a farmer, and I'm not the farmer. And I want it to be able to have art spaces for people. So I want it to be like a culinary, quote, art retreat center. And then I don't know if you know Maggie Pewitt. She has this space called Mildred's Lane. And you might know her through the Scrabble Scramble dinner. And so she uses all these Scrabble pieces, and then you're supposed to use the first letter of your name to like make a dish. Like, so you make these dishes and then you draw things on a tablecloth. She's really interesting. So look up Mildred's Lane, and she has this space out in the middle of Pennsylvania, and she does these different movements, these different curriculums, and her whole space is about like, it's a living art center, and she does domestic arts, and then people can come and participate how they want to. So different artists come, and she has worked with different colleges and stuff like that. So I just want a space where people just come and they can hang out with me, and we do different experiments, and it's preferably by the water.
I love that. I love that. It feels like a liberated future. It feels like a world that you're like, I will be free to do whatever I want, and I'll be happy to have people come and create with me, right? Like you've sort of envisioned a space
Yeah.
that have all of the things that you need and all of the things that you want to give.
And it be a place that is a sanctuary that I can stay if I want to and not leave. Cause like in a place like, in a situation like now, thinking about, we don't know what will the future will hold. Like how many pandemics might we have in our future? Hope not, but you know, but where you can feel great and not, I don't know, like feeling like I wanted to move to New York. And then after the pandemic, my daughter just didn't want to move there anyway. And I wanted to move to Newark where, you know, you had more space. But even then, I'm just like, I wouldn't want to be in New York or now in the pandemic. Oh, so I want somewhere that's cool, pandemic proof. If we're gonna put all our dreams on there, let's just put an indoor swimming pool, or a salt, you know, like we want indoor and outdoor, like salt water. We want it to be ecologically responsible. So like if we're having the pool on the inside that we have to heat up, then there has to be, I don't know, some exchanges that we're doing, a steam room and a sauna and a whirlpool. Of course, a chef's kitchen and a beautiful state-of-the-art artistic studio. So James, we're gonna come back to this like in 1 year when I have this or less, and you'll be invited.
I mean, it is documented on a link for the world to see what I mean, we can name it if you want, but right now I'm just calling it your farm and art space.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to this dream, right? I mean, one of these things is it is about putting down your dreams, and maybe serendipitously it'll come true. But there's also
we're just hoping that someone's gonna hand over their farm to me and just say, hey, you're gonna make this a beautiful place and share it with so many people, and here's an endowment. We can put that down there on there too.
Endowment. I mean, definitely the funds.
We don't want to think about, we want to think about it's going to be in perpetuity, that it's going to be in legacy to someone, you know? So we have to have an endowment.
Excellent. We will have a just perpetually growing fund.
Should we put Black American Express card? I would say it's like, yeah, the American Express, because, you know, when you use the Black American Express card, you know you can pay it at the end of the month. It's unlimited.
There's no concern. It means
you can spend as much
really
money as you want, huh? It's a one-time being in the
card,
Black is very good.
Definitely is a symbol.
So I usually ask people about their artist journey. And so you want to tell people about growing up in the wonderful neighborhood of Jackson Heights in New York,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like, what was your artist journey? Because we never talked about that ever.
It's a bit of a mess, but it is what it is. And I'm very happy now, but I like sort of the different turns I've taken. But I grew up in Jackson Heights. I used to walk to art classes as a kid. It was like a mile walk that we would take down Northern Boulevard, which is like a very busy, 6-lane kind of boulevard in Queens with like auto dealerships and Burger Kings. But I would walk down that street with my dad or my stepdad, and I would go to art class.
Where would you
And
go?
it was like a program done in a school. And it was like, it's like the thing that my dad and my stepdad both remind me of, that they were the one that did this for me. Like, remember I used to take you to art class. I was like, I feel like it was the other one, but I don't, I'm never sure who took me to art class more. But that's kind of the beginning of that. I went to the High School of Art and Design in New York City. And that is, it's not LaGuardia High School for the arts, which is kind of more competitive and fancier.
That's the Fame school,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's the school from the series, right, from Fame. I think, a lot of well-known actors and singers go there, or came from there. But the High School of Art and Design is on, East Midtown. It's like, 2nd Avenue off of the Queensboro Bridge. And it was most recently from like a lot of the major graffiti artists from the 80s went to art and design like that, and still to this day, there's just like a culture of everybody there having a black book, which is like a black notebook that everybody would practice their tags on or practice their, their artwork on. But there's like a culture there of a heritage of graffiti. Obviously, like there's like people like Mark Jacobs went to the High School of Art and Design, Art Spiegelman, the illustrator, a lot of interesting, mid-century artists went there as well. I recently found out somebody who's really inspiring to me is Lorna Simpson.
I love her. Yeah.
She went there too. And so I've just been digging into the history of the school I went to as a kid, right, in high school, because it had a lot of impact with me. I painted 2 hours a day in high school every single day. And that kind of just like instilled in me like a need, right, to create something. So not everybody goes back to high school with this journey, but for me, it's a key part of like a childhood spirit that I bring into what I do, of just like having a space to make, having time to paint, having time to make in whatever I do. And
I hope my daughter in the background, not to cut you off, is listening to you, because this is what I'm telling her at 12 years old, is that don't waste your time and think about how you're spending your time, because you will never have this much free time where you don't have responsibilities except for school. You'll never have this much free time to work on the things that you want to work on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and more than that, like, don't worry if you're any good. Like, don't worry if you're good at it. Like, sometimes the stuff you do when you're young, and sometimes the stuff that young people make that is just like not concerned with doing things correct, the right way, or how people want it to be, it's better. Like, it's honestly better to see work that is honestly coming from you and from what comes out of your hands. Just let your hands work, right? Whether it's artwork or whatever it is that you love, the more you practice that, it's muscle memory. Like, it's not really genius. It's not really like, for me,
is it putting in your 10,000 hours?
I mean, maybe, yeah. It's the work, right? It's work that you make, and then you've achieved something. Like, then you've achieved a body, or, genius is sometimes just 10,000 hours of work. But yeah, I've got like recently I unpacked like all of my paintings from high school, and I was just like, these are great. Like, they're just good portraits of like my friend that I was like doing a portrait of when I was 15. So that matters to me, and it's something that I hold dear. But yeah, I guess from there, I went to liberal arts school. I went to Vassar. I have a just liberal arts education. I didn't go to art school, didn't go to design school. But where I
How'd
ended
you
up,
like going to Vassar and being one of the, you know, Vassar is a really great liberal arts school in, is it Hudson?
it's in Poughkeepsie. It's close
Poughkeepsie.
enough to Hudson. Yeah.
Yeah, like so Poughkeepsie, and it used to be an all-girls school and used to be the sister school to Yale.
Yep.
Okay, so
they were going to merge with Yale, or Yale requested for all of Vassar to merge with Yale in 1969 or so, because I think this is like Ivy League history, but I think Radcliffe had done that with Harvard. Like Radcliffe was a women's college at Harvard, and they merged the two. So Yale said, okay, we're going to pick a college and merge with them. So they asked Vassar, and Vassar said, no, we'll just become co-ed. So in 1969, they started admitting men. And I'd say now it's like 60-40, but going back to the feminine, I think that's an important thing for me. Having gone to a former women's college, the spirit of that matters to me a lot. So yeah, Vassar's near and dear to my heart. I learned a lot there, and took on some projects that were just like wide explorations of, I wrote a thesis on gentrification, but it was more about making postcards and snow globes, and I made objects. I couldn't help myself. I made things rather than do great scholarship. But from then on, I went into the world of architecture. I became sort of a design strategist in the world of workplace design and community design and urban planning, urban spaces, which is really where I kind of honed design skills, right? Not being a designer or an architect, but learning to apply like problem solving and research to client problems, right? And this is where like the client part of me is really core, because I kind of like developed the rapport of like learning from people, asking questions. Like that service mentality is kind of part of who I am. It's for me, it's a curious form. It's a generous form. I like want to learn and I want to help solve people's problems. So every time I take on a project, Dreaming Collective included, it's very much ingrained in like, how am I doing client work? How am I, learning from people? How am I proposing options and alternatives and different kinds of ways that things can go? How do I prototype? How do I bring people to co-create? And co-creation is a big part of this project and a big part of just my philosophy of being a designer, a wannabe designer, an artist, is like, how can I bring other people into my process? How can I bring other people's ideas into what I do? So I spent a lot of time doing that work. Most recently, I've been working with within the food innovation space. So food is I'm a big foodie. I'm also vegan, but that's irrelevant. But food matters to me a lot. But I've been working in the food innovation space, and working with a couple of hospitals in the Midwest around designing medically tailored meals for patients who have just left their facilities, whether they're for congestive heart failure or for diabetes, and helping create frozen ready meals that these patients can get delivered to them that are tailored to their conditions. So I've been thinking a lot about the needs of those communities and how to make sure that those people can be fed food as medicine, and how institutions like hospitals can further think about nutrition and care outside of just like, preventative, more on the preventative or like long-term, or rather than, just an outpatient procedure. So
that's so interesting. And it's interesting how like, our creativity can overlap. So I've worked with Health Plan, Katie knows it, Cornell Scott Health, on a diabetes curriculum. So it's like a 6-week curriculum, and we're talking about being preventative and looking at, like, they hire a person like me to work with the nutritionists and the dietitians, because I look at, like, how do you present this information in a way that's human and humane, and then in a way that people want to receive it, you know? And so, like, looking at what are the things that people are going to inhibit people, like, so making sure that it's cost effective, but then, you know, people come to me about, like, for cultural relevancy and making sure that the food tastes good, you know? And then how do you work with under-resourced populations, or populations that, you know, usually dietitians and nutritionists, it's not congruent with, like, either by class or, you know, race or culturally, you know, ethnically, like, not understanding, like, how people eat. And so being able to think about how you change behavior too. So, like, I insisted on incorporating meditation and wellness aspects, because people are stressed. And so if you're stressed, you're not gonna eat well if you're stressed, you know, like, I can teach you how to make white bean soup, which people are like, oh, I don't want to eat that soup. But like, I remember when I was workshopping this white bean soup, and this lady was just like, this white bean soup looks nasty. I don't want to eat this white bean soup. And then she ate the white bean soup. And then there's a program where they gave you the groceries to then go back and cook. And she came back the next week, and she's just like, I cooked that white bean soup 3 times for my family. But it's like, it's such an easy recipe, and it's really flavorful, because I just show people how to, like, saute onions and garlic and caramelize them, and then use a bay leaf, and then 2 cans of white bean soup, a couple cans of water, and use carrots and celery too, and then just season it with a little salt and a little Italian seasoning, and then put a handful of spinach, or you can also do it with tomatoes. But it's so, when you saute the onions and the garlic, it just makes it such good body. And it's no money to it costs $2, you know, nothing. And then you can apply that to just using other beans and other soups, and if other cultures looking at the different seasonings, you know. So
Absolutely. One of the things that I find really interesting when it comes to learning about new foods is sometimes you need somebody to show you, right? Like, sometimes you just need somebody to be like, this is how it's done. And I think people are used to doing that with TV, but, like, not really going ahead and then taking the step of, like, watching something on TV but then doing it.
right.
There's something about having somebody in your space, whether it was like yourself or having just the ingredients at your doorstep, right? That, like, suddenly, like, well, I've got to make something with this, right? And I can follow these instructions. And the more you practice sort of subbing one item for something else, or, like, maybe it's spinach one day, but then you try kale. I think a lot about the way I cook, which is like, I make the same thing over and over and over until I'm sick of it, and I put a little twist on it every time. But yeah, going back to food as medicine, for me, this project has been about learning from different communities about what do they want to eat, because
Exactly.
like, more than that, it's like you can get your, and especially when a lot of the population is really the senior population, who is sometimes living with home care, others with, you know, family caregivers, some of them live alone. And so really learning from the range of what kinds of food people are actually going to want to eat, and thinking about developing a food program that is, like you said, relevant to people's culture, right? So we have populations that you know, the team I'm on is looking at Grand Rapids, but they're also looking at Detroit, and those two places couldn't be more different.
Especially like
And
Detroit, depending on where you're looking at, right? Like, because it's like so many different neighborhoods and different ethnicities.
and changing populations too. There's, you know, what works for somebody from one neighborhood who's an immigrant who doesn't necessarily know what to do with a certain ingredient might not work for somebody who is used to cooking for themselves their whole lives, right? And using what's at the supermarket. And so I'm just spending a lot of time listening to people and asking them, what do you like to eat? Like, what do you eat on a usual basis? And trying to work with a dietitian to reverse engineer it. Like, do you like salty things? Do you like, your greens? Do you like to eat chicken? Well, let's find ways to make that work for you.
Well, so that's what I do. I do like a culturally, I have a, I'll share it with you if you want, cultural menu planning questionnaire. So it says to people like, like, what are your goals, like in eating? Cause like, I don't know when they're coming to the health plan, people are assuming that their goal, like I can't assume what their goals are, so what are your goals? What are your goals that you want for your family when you're eating? What are the ways in which you eat? What are your favorite foods? And as you said, like, what do you like? Salty, sweet, X, Y, and Z. So especially like if you're dealing with diabetes and you want something sweet, then we can work with like, showing people how to use cinnamon and, using different types of sugars and high fiber foods or things that are going to even out their blood level and feeling satiated and stuff like that. So I do the questionnaire, and I always try and work with my clients to do questionnaires and ask people, because they're always like, we don't know what to do. And it's like, did you ask some people? And they're like, no. It's like, that's all you have to do. It's like, you can't create, it's like, and so this is what I was talking about when you're asking people questions and people are being unreasonable. You're like, you have to ask the people that you're serving what they want. It's like, I can't make a curriculum and I don't speak to the people. I have to speak to the people. And you have to, get a graph of, like in New Haven, Katie knows another organization I worked with, City Seed. And so we did this whole thing about wanting families to cook better. So we had an initial program and we went out and did the questionnaires, and it's like, okay, like, New Haven's like a predominantly people color neighborhood city, but there's all different types of, there's Italians, there's Asians, there's Mexicans, Colombians, just all different types of people. Like, it's like, especially we're known for pizza. It's like, we're known for all great different ethnic foods because there's ethnic enclaves, so just found out the different things, like, people love barbecue chicken, people like pasta, they love, everyone across New Haven, they love pasta and fettuccine Alfredo, so it's like I show people how to be able to make fettuccine from scratch, but then how to make it vegan and then how to make it low fat. So there's like 3 different versions that people can make. I love doing, do you like a vegan fettuccine, and what are your secrets? I'll tell you some of mine.
So I've learned a lot of vegan stuff from using Purple Carrot, which is like a meal delivery. And I've just got like a million recipes because I get a book of recipes every week. But I've been using either like use cashews that I either soften with water, or like let them, soften and food process them to make them like a cheese, or I use cashew butter. Cashew butter is like incredible to me.
I want to try that.
Favorite cashew butter. I've done like cashew butter with a little bit of nutritional yeast. Sometimes like mix it in with some like really good like roasted leeks to give it like depth, and make like a good creamy sauce. I'm using a lot of coconut milk in my pasta now, so I make like a pasta like a vodka sauce that I used to use like a whole pint of heavy cream. But I subbed it for coconut milk, and like you almost can't taste, like you really can't taste the coconut because the creaminess and the vodka flavor cancel it out. So I love everything. I love trying different kinds of substitutions. And cashew butter has been great.
I want to try cashew butter. I love cashew also to make Caesar salad dressing. And with the nutritional yeast, that's one of my secrets. And then using cauliflower that you boil and then, put in the food processor, and then it naturally becomes creamy. And then at Stone Barns, do you know Stone Barns in New York? It's a
Blue
famous,
Hill?
like, yeah,
Blue, yeah.
exactly. So I've gone and hung out there and in their kitchen, and they made risotto with parsnips. And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And so just roasting or boiling parsnips and then putting them in the food processor gives it that nice creamy, but then like just a little, that hint of like sweetness, so that's a little secret.
That sounds really good. Parsnips are like a good secret weapon. When I have parsnip, I always remember what the times I've had parsnips. What I
I feel
had
it's so
yesterday.
underrated as a New England vegetable because I never grew up with them,
Yeah.
being Jamaican. But then when I found out about parsnips, I love them. I think that they're so good.
Yeah. Another thing that makes me think of is yesterday I had picked up at Trader Joe's jicama tacos. So like
Oh yeah,
tortillas, jicama tortillas. And jicama is like the right amount of crunch. When you slice them super thin, made like the perfect tacos. So I made tofu tacos with like a sriracha kind of thing and came out great. Super easy. And I like put them on the pan for like 5 minutes.
and how long have you been vegan? Because Colombians love their meat. And how does your family respond to that? Are they vegan
Colombians
or?
love their meat, and Latin food is meat and rice and beans and no vegetables. Like I can't think of any vegetable.
I try and dispel that myth because when I work with a lot of Latin populations, they say like no verduras, but then I try and show people, no, they say that they're like no verduras, no verduras. I was like, no, we're going to learn about the verduras. Yeah. Verdura es muy delicioso. So my Spanish is not very good, but they appreciate that I try.
You said it right.
It's not very good because I studied French, so it's like my Spanish is just like learning from the kitchen and like learning from my Colombian girlfriend and her mom, but I try and show people how to like the flavors. And then also looking at different recipes. Like, so there's a like Mexican white bean recipe that's really delicious that has pepitas in it. I show people how to make a sofrito dressing, so like the same sofrito that you would have, just use more vinegar, more lemon juice, like stuff like that. Like when you're making sancocho, to put, more pumpkin, and you can put like butter beans and then spinach and stuff at the end, like stuff like that. But then like the jicama tacos, if you show people how to make that, they'd be like, this is so good.
Yeah, and it tasted good fresh, like it said good, like super crispy and fresh, but then I roasted them and I was like, they're also good crispy. I think, going to your point about Latin food, a lot of it is like people like to hide their vegetables, like they like to blend them or like to roast them or like to make a sauce with them, like they're familiar with that. But like I mean, this is like, nobody really wants to eat this, but like a chunk of broccoli on a plate, and I would have never seen that growing up.
I wonder if people got in the habit of doing that just because, a lot of the stuff we get from the supermarket is not really tasty. But I mean, speaking of, if I might chime in, because I'm starting to fade here.
No. Of course. We're wrapping up. We're at 8:13, and I appreciate you spending the whole time with us.
Liberated futures. Like, I grew up on Maui, and even though I have a German heritage, I have always felt closer because I was there in my formative years to the native culture in Hawaii, maybe because they were an oppressed people. But I mean, I remember being a kid and always wanting my skin to be brown so that I would be part of the local community. And, but anyway, I think my ultimate dream is to be able to have a foot in both communities, because I still have so much love and affinity. When I grew up there, I was a minority, being a white person, and learned to really like live in harmony with all these different cultures: Portuguese, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, Hawaiians. And it exposed me to the world of food, which, I'm so grateful for. Nadine knows that I've been taking this, working on the farm, I've been taking this plant-based cooking course online, because, you know, one of the things I find is that people get stuff from being on the farm and getting fresh food and eating seasonally. Like I always ate fresh stuff, but eating seasonally has just been like a whole new awakening for me to eat in concert with the seasons. And even when I look at people who are promoting plant-based eating, I see them using stuff that's easy to find versus what we get here. So you guys are talking about like eating what's available, and one of my things about taking this course is like, well, this is great, except you're using the same things over and over again. And like, we're growing bok choy on the farm. We have all this squash. Like, I don't see nearly enough recipes using those things. And last year I did this nutrition outreach program to the food pantry clients that we were taking food to, where we were doing like a cooking demo with them, using the stuff from the farm and then pairing it with what was in the pantry that week. And I would give them the ingredients from the farm so they could take it home and make it again. And I ended up coming up with my own recipes because I was like, I'm not finding what I want. And I made these amazing eggplant rice meatballs that were just using eggplant, which people are afraid of. And my favorite, which I make at home all the time, are these chickpea and beet burgers. So a faux, you know, vegetarian burger, which people eat them and don't even know that they're made with beets. But I want to, like, I really want to do
chickpea and beets, Katie?
Chickpeas and beets, yeah.
Yeah. Well, like when I did your,
I bet it looks like raw meat with all the beet.
Yeah,
I want that recipe.
I mean, it's red. Yeah.
I want that recipe. When I did the last demo that I did, you guys had Swiss chard for me, and I want to do like what you're saying, like I want to do Swiss chard in a different way. And so I stuffed it, and I never did stuffed Swiss chard before, and that was really good. And like bok choy, like I love bok choy, and you know, like a lot of people, you know, like you can stir fry it, but then like one way that I've had it, it's really good. Bok choy with pumpkin. I've had like this in Trinidad. My family in Trinidad, like a Creole sauce, so like just onions, peppers, and tomatoes, and then you put the pumpkin in there, and then the bok choy at the very end, and that's delicious. But then also like, also not realizing that you can eat bok choy raw, you know, and I like to show people how to make coleslaw with bok choy, and then put the ramen inside there, and then make a dressing with the packets and stuff that you get from the Chinese food store, that you always have like the duck sauce and all those things, and you never use them.
Use your leftovers. You open up the drawer with all the
right. And so you make, there's a dressing that you can make that's really good, and you don't have to use the packet from the ramen. You know, so it is using stuff that people have, because ramen's not necessarily good, but it's, if you use it just for crunch, then that's good. And it's really the packet that has a lot of the stuff that's not best for you. But
it was great. I had like this recurring group of people coming to that program last year, and some of, like, this woman showed up and she was like, I won't eat anything with apple cider vinegar. And I made a slaw early in the season with you know, some of the greens and the carrots and the beets, the overwintered carrots, and she ate it, and she was like, and her husband like talked her, like sort of bullied her into it. She ate it. She was like, I don't like apple cider vinegar, but I really like this. She goes, I would eat this. And they loved everything I made. Like they just kept coming back, which is great.
and were they making it at home too?
They were making it home. Yeah. And then we had something in the fall at the farm, and they came and they brought their grandkids, and I was so happy to see them. This was it was last fall, actually. Yeah, because we did an outdoor movie at the farm. They came back and they were like, you know, she was like, I can't get my son to eat eggplant, but she's like, we make those meatballs and I put them in the freezer and they're awesome.
Yeah, eggplant meatballs are really good, and they're a traditional Italian thing. Are you on the Worcester Square Cooks, Katie?
No.
Oh, join that group. They're really great. They have really good recipes, and they had a nice recipe for eggplant meatballs that someone, there's a lot of people that are older, so they have those old-fashioned, you know, straight from Italy, their grandparents' recipes. I love seeing them. They share them on there. And plenty of young people too, but there's a lot of people that there's a lot of recipes that a lot of young people would never make. They're from their grandparents. So Katie, do you want to put a dream up here?
Well, I think I just stated my dream. My dream is to have a foot in on the East Coast and a foot in Hawaii, so that I can feel my presence and make. That's really like the house thing. Let's see. New material relations.
I'm thinking, yeah. Are you talking about a different kind of like way of traveling? Are you talking about a way of relating to other humans? Are you talking about like a new social world that you want to enter into?
Well, I feel like, I mean, no, this is really like the whole, sorry, you guys were talking about home. And so that really resonated with me because I feel like I brought my social assemblage that I grew up with in Hawaii to the East Coast with me when I moved back here. I mean, the whole time I was growing up there, I couldn't wait to sort of get back to the mainland and sort of be back in civilization. And yet I brought all of those practices and sort of mentality with me here. Married an African-American man, much to the chagrin of my family, and had these amazing biracial children. But just like not being afraid to live, you know, in an urban setting and interact with my neighbors, no matter what their culture. And yeah. The funny thing is like, you know, a year ago, we were in Hawaii for the winter. That's why Nadine said, "Are you on Maui?" And I had an opportunity to stay there. And my husband was like, "Let's do this." He's like, "We'll quit our jobs. We'll move here. Let's do it." And he basically like laid it before me on a plate. And we came back here to pack up our stuff. And it was like 3 days before we were supposed to be leaving. He left his job. He gave away all his work clothes. And I was like, I can't do it. So I had this opportunity to have like everything I wanted. And I realized like, maybe this is not, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So.
What aren't you ready about? You're not ready to be that isolated in Hawaii, or?
Oh no, I mean, I love being there, and there's so much about it that is like nourishing and healing, and the pace is slower so you can absorb things more. And I just think I was not ready to leave the farm. I just felt like my work there was not ready, not done. And that was too rushed. I think that was and I wasn't ready to leave our home here, which is probably like, yeah.
So James, Katie's part of what I call, in Westville, I call it a cult. So
why?
Why?
Yeah.
Why do you think?
I don't know. That sounds so negative, but maybe you don't. Well,
usually when I say it to people in Westville, they're more like the Travis and the Damien type. So, and they always say, they're like, "Well, Nadine, you can join the cult too." And I'm like, "You guys, it's a cult. Like, why would I want to join a cult?" So it's a very, but I say it in jest, maybe. It's one of those places that it's very community oriented. I went to middle school there, Katie. I don't know if you know that. I went to St. Aidan's. So I've always been connected to Westville, and I love the Mitchell Library and the culture that has always been there.
And it's a very artist oriented community, yeah. James.
So that's what I was gonna say, James. It's a very artistic, like lots of people know each other, lots of it's an alternative place, like where there's a place called East Rock, which is over by Yale and very much like academic and very separate from the city. And Westville is one of those places, even though it's a cult, they let other people come in and enjoy their space.
Are you hearing her?
so they have like festivals and outdoor things, and everyone knows each other, and they have a great coffee shop, like the best coffee shop in the city. But lots, a couple little art places, food places, art walks. It's like really, it's really cute. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. So that's where
going
to special place.
What's the art walk? What's the Art walk.
Yeah.
Art walk was one of the first things I did in New Haven before we even had an apartment here. We came and we're like hanging out in the city, and it was the weekend of art walk, and we were at the Edgewood Park, and this what's that? What is the phrase I'm looking for when everybody breaks into spontaneous dance?
A flash mob?
Yeah, there was a flash mob of teenagers. It was awesome. I was like, I want to live here.
James, you see how I'm talking about the cult? You know? So
Well, I mean, sometimes you know what we think of as a cult is just a group of people who have a shared belief system that is like not the dominant groups, right? Like I'm trying to break down that word and be like, well, everyone wants to live in a community where you have shared values that are a little countercultural or a little bit outside of the norm, or even in this thought of like bridging Hawaii and your East Coast. Like it makes me think of like there's something really special as like somebody who empathizes with being like an insider outsider, right? Like I don't like, where do I belong? Who do I empathize with? Who do I not empathize with? And being in a space of people who also share like, whether it is outsider feeling, diasporic feeling, like all of those things are I mean, they work beautifully when they do, right? Like it's almost like you don't want to disturb like the precious like community that you've built when you have one. So it's interesting that you're building one, like you have like a farm, right? Like you have like a program and you have a community that you're a part of, but you have like a place that you're longing for, that you're like, okay, like I believe in, and like I care about, you know, the history and the people of this place, but you couldn't be further away. So I find that really special, like as distant as it may feel for you, right? Because it makes me think about if that's something that you do want to accomplish one day, like you probably will, if it's just lingering for you, if you want to go back and what would it be like to have a little like East Coast community of folks from college towns in Hawaii? How would
A lot
that
of East
culture
Coast
influence
people.
the people who you grew up with
Hawaii is a special
in
place.
Hawaii? I mean, here's talking about dreaming. Like, yeah, when it comes to dreaming, like there's so much that
The funny thing is like I mentioned, when I was growing up there, when I was growing up, I was definitely an odd man out. There were only 2 or 3 other white kids in my class. But I go there now, I'm sort of like, I feel like a local, and I'm running the Howleys, like, what are you doing here? I don't belong here. But the weird thing about Maui, particularly Maui, which is where I grew up, is that it is this weird magnetic place that draws people in. And I cannot tell you how many times like I have been there and have run into people that I know from elsewhere. Like I was there 2 winters ago, and one of my board members texted me from the farm, texted me and said, "Where are you? I'm here on a anniversary trip with my husband, and I'm only on Maui for 1 more day. Can we have dinner?" And I was like, what? Like, she didn't even know if I was on Maui. She just said, "I'm on Maui. Where are you?" And when I said, "I'm on Maui," and she's like, "Well, I'm only going to be here another like 36 hours. Let's get together and have dinner." But like, she didn't even know that that's where I was. She just knew I was out there. I mean, I've had numerous crazy instances like that. Like I go there, my best friend who's living in San Francisco shows up, and like my mom and I together and have dinner with her. And like, she just walks into some gallery and like, "Hey, does anybody know Hetty Walter?" It's my mom. And, you know, it was where my mom worked. It's just weird magnetic energy that like brings people together. It happens all the time. My daughter too. So, yeah, special place. Anyway.
So let's wrap up. I want to say thank you, Katie, for spending time with us. I hope that your dream comes true, and I think that it will. And at least we got to talk a little bit indirectly about food stuff, and hopefully we can pick that up. James, I'd like to say,
before we leave, I was writing down the cards you read for me. What was the first card? I remember the description.
yeah. Oh, I nourish my soul and answer to my true hungers.
Yeah. What was the category though? Like, in other words, what are those what did you call them? Like the second
These are
grouping was flower.
affirmation cards.
Affirmation. Thank you.
Yeah, and the other ones are flower cards.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
Thanks.
James, it was great speaking with you. I didn't get too much work done, but that's fine. Well, I feel like just talking was just like wonderful. And then you're so interesting. It's like we met like for how many weeks? It's like I learned all this stuff. Like
12
I learned
weeks
that you're
in a
like
row.
that you're Colombian. And I mean, I just learned recently that you're from Jackson Heights because I love Jackson Heights. But then like all this stuff with I love the mural and how you divided in the different categories, but then like working with food and then design thinking and everything like that is like really amazing. I learned so much. So thank you.
So did I. I mean, I really appreciate talking about food. I really appreciate doing cards with you. You've taught me so much about that. So I will definitely, when I turn these into cards, I will show you for sure. You'll probably be the first person.
Yeah, I would love to see
Hey, I just
that.
got my print job from Moo. So
Yeah,
you'll definitely
well, that's the thing about like why it's really good to talk about your dreams and stuff, because it's like, you know, like with Matt, like I talked with him and then, you know, that I had a project and I said, let me just sit down and do it. And they're great, you know, and it's a great way of communicating, especially like sometimes it can be hard to break down people to have like small talk, so it becomes a catalyst to be able to connect. So I just want to tell people that I do have some I have my first Meatless Monday. That's what I was telling you about, Katie, if you want to join, and please tell people about it on Monday. And we'll be talking about different types of plant-based eating. So like we'll be talking about Rastafarianism, about Seventh-day Adventists, like different sects of people that have been vegetarian and plant-based. And the next program after that will be about the plant-based pantry. And then the third program will be looking at the blue zones, like so longevity. And then I
Where
will
are you
have,
doing these?
so these are on Zoom. So everything
Okay.
is on Zoom, and it is from what time to what time? Rose, is it from 6 to 7:15?
Let me double check that for you.
But it will be on, you can sign up, but you can always watch on Facebook. And then all our programs are taped, which is great. So you can always direct people to them. And
Okay, the Meatless Monday is Monday the 25th, 7 o'clock to 8:15.
okay.
excellent.
So, and then next week we have Lonnie Ancion will be joining us, and she lives in Boston now, but she used to live in New Haven, worked for Art Space, and was a Connecticut residing artist for quite a while. So it'll be interesting to hear about her. She does interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary work, and she does installations, and she is a friend, but I'm gonna have a conversation later. James, I could be learning all these different things. She does things with plants and electricity and all different types of stuff. And she's done stuff with corn and Native American things. Like she's done, and she's Filipino and does things around her culture. So it'll be interesting to hear about what she's been up to in Boston. I know that she's had a bunch of different residencies and different projects. So I look forward to speaking with her. Thank you.
All right,
Have a
thank you
good
everyone
night.
for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.